This is a four-sided planer, so effectively it's planing all four faces of a piece of timber at once.
Just behind Sisk's Dublin head office, there is a large building with a lot of large machines and a group of apprentice carpenters operating them, making a variety of different kinds of timber products. This is the training centre, also known as the joinery, which John G. Sisk set up over 50 years ago. And I'm here with Ronan Murphy, the manager of the centre.
So we're in the John G. Sisk training centre. That's a very important part of the Sisk fabric, if you like. John G. Sisk was one of the original founders. It was his vision that thought of the training centre. But it was based on family history of trades. Old John, as we call him himself, started in Cork. He was an apprentice plasterer. John G. was an apprentice carpenter in his day. So they have a great affinity and a realisation for what apprenticeship brings to a construction company and the quality of people that come out of it. So his vision led to not the structure we're in now. It was a prefab building back then, actually, when I started. A tiny little operation, but the quality of material and the quality of tradesmen that come out of that was second to none.
A love of natural materials like wood and stone, how they are best used in the projects, both large and small, that Sisk is behind, and the training of the craftspeople that work with them, is very much a part of the fabric of John Sisk and Son. And this is what we are going to focus on in this episode of Inside Sisk. Inside Sisk is a podcast series brought to you by John Sisk and Son, where we meet the people behind the projects. I'm Patrick Hawhey, and in this episode I will be meeting two Sisk team members who have spent a lifetime working with timber and have become highly skilled masters of their trade. One of them is Ronan Murphy, who we just heard from there, and the other is Declan O'Donovan, now working as construction manager at Sisk. I'll also meet some of the next generation, Eddie Mungy and Owen Grocott, who are two of the current intake of apprentices in the John G. Sisk Training Centre. But first, let's get a bit more of a sense of just how ingrained this love of natural materials is in the fabric of the company. When I met Christine and Hal Sisk to record our interview for episode 1 of this series, they both spoke about the passion that John G. Sisk had for wood and for stone, and how this is also a passion that is shared by the rest of the family. You noticed his love of wood, is that right?
Yeah. And that's transgenerational. You know, if you talk to any of my cousins, it is wood. We are quite nerdy, I would put it that way, about wood. We all really love wood. We like it in its simplest form, very little adornment. And, if you talk to the guys over in the joinery, they'll talk, a lot of us will go, well, we'd like X, Y and Z made. And it's just no handles. So they've got to the point where they just kind of go, the Sisk handle, which is a door with no handle, or just somewhere where you hook your fingers behind to open it. And
so very much about the materials.
Very much about the materials. The materials speak for themselves, and whether that is a kind of an interpretation of the work speaks for itself, whether it's an interpretation of that we are understated. It is not about drawing attention to yourself. It is about delivering and good work.
Following on from what Christine was saying there about wood, to that we could add a natural stone, which is another great passion of his. He was very unusual in that when he joined the construction industry, the family firm, in 1930, there were very few professionally qualified engineers working in the construction industry. If you graduated as an engineer, you went into design or public service. What happened at that time was that the Cork City Hall was being rebuilt, and this was a major contract, and so he started work with his father, and unusually for an engineer, qualified civil engineer, he got involved in the joinery, the woodwork, right, and the stonework, and taught himself so much about those materials, a passion which he retained to the very end. The other memory we have of him was sitting at the far side sketching. He was, in some respects, a frustrated architect.
Yeah.
And he sketched with his left hand and wrote with his right hand. Like many people in times past, they had the left-handedness beaten out of them.
Yeah.
And yet the artistic side came out with the left hand. More recently, and especially, there is another twist in the story, is that the National Wood Awards highlight and celebrate wood construction, everything from furniture and cutlery to major buildings at home and by Irish designers abroad. And I'm very happy to say that the company won the top award for Centre Parks. Now, it's quite important to say that this is a design and build contract, whereas in previous era times everything might be specified by an architect, but in the design and build process, we, the contractors, have a major input in the selection of the materials and how they're used and the design features. And here again we have a passion for timber construction.
My name is Declan O'Donovan. I suppose I am a construction manager with Sisk since 1992. A long time at this stage. All of a sudden you become one of the older members of staff by default. I don't know how it happened and when it happened, but that's where we are at the minute. Yeah.
Excellent. So your background is as a carpenter, basically. Is that how you started out?
Yeah.
So take me right back to the start there.
I suppose I started off serving my time with a small company in West Cork, and I was in third year, and I suppose back in 92 things were probably quiet in West Cork, so I got laid off. And I suppose at the time my main target was to get my qualification, to see out my trade, and I got a job with Sisk, and that was the basis of it, to finish out my trade and get my papers and take it from there and see where it went. And I suppose one thing led to another, and all of a sudden here we are nearly 30 years later. I always loved doing things with my hands, but timber is a fabulously versatile product. You can do anything to it, and it still today probably has lost a certain amount of its charm, and we'll say the way things are being done today. But if you do a project and kind of take a nod to the history, if you go into an old church, look at the roof, while it's doing its practical job, the effort and the work they put into it to make it actually decorative, and the tools they had hundreds of years ago, and still the roof was perfect today. When you think of it, in the past the tools they had were basic enough, but they had a thing called time. So I suppose where we're gone today is the time is the main, we'll say, problem that we'd have. But we have the machinery. So you can use CNCs, you can laser cut, you can do so many things nowadays with the machinery that you can get the same finish with less time. Yeah. And nowadays, I suppose you've got the glulam beams. They can do so many spans, so much. It takes like the Centre Parks, like the big swim pools, and you have glulam beams spanning fabulous distances and looks the part. So timber is just so versatile. You can do so much with it with very little effort.
You started off very successfully, and you were really good at what you did.
Tried my best, anyway. Yeah.
You went on to win national competitions.
I did a national prints competition. They're the winning medal. It's silver medal, unusually for first place. They're a lovely moment to have. They're and it isn't about the medal. It isn't really. It is you'd meet some great people doing the competitions. One of the lads that did the competition with me in the joinery, we competed against each other, was Richard Sheehan, and he's still with Sisk in Dublin. So you do meet people, and it's the last kind of 5 or 6 that are left standing, and you go to Dublin, and you've 3 days, and best man standing at the end of it all. But
was you?
It wasn't me on that occasion,
and not just that occasion. What were you, and two separate?
Yeah, I did. I won the carpentry first in '93, and I won the joinery in '94. So it was the first time it was done, and it was nice to have something. Don't know whether it was done since. Don't know. No, it was great. I'd encourage anyone to take part in anything like that. It's no load. The likes of Sisk at the time, to be fair, I had great support from him. But you go up there and you see something different. Like the Chinese team were training on one of the competitions. I think it was the carpentry, and they were doing training, and they came to Ireland as part of their training at the time. I don't know whether that still happens nowadays or not, but they came and they were working away on the side, doing their own thing, doing the same as we were doing, but they weren't taking part in the competition. It was just they were training. So it was nice. It was interesting.
And do you remember what you did? Did you have to make something? Did you have to do a certain amount of joints in a certain amount of time? Or
yeah, like in the carpentry, it is basically roof geometry. It goes back to your church roof, but it would be based on a shape that you probably couldn't build a building underneath. It could be any kind of shape, and it's all about just getting the angles and developing it all first, and then you actually cut the timber and make it. The joinery would be more based on a model size door or a model window. It might be kind of 1.2 metres by 600, and there'd be maybe a circular window, and it might be a Gothic arch like you'd have in a church door, and it's all the different joints. So then the judges would come along and they'd test it all hand tight before you glue it, because the margin is very, very small. From kind of first to fourth, there's nothing between you, like. So they check you all the ways through the process, and so they mark you as you go along. So if you can have joints that are over tight or too loose, you lose marks. And so that's the way it was anyway back then.
And do you remember how you felt when you were handed the silver in this case?
It was great. You put a lot of effort into it. You do, like, and everyone does. And you'd be so busy doing your own thing, you pay very little attention to what's going on around you, and it's only at the very end that you can actually stand back and walk around to different benches and have a look at them. And like, you'd hate to be the judge picking who's 1, 2, 3 or 4, because at the same time what everyone has gone through. Tis a hard slog, but on the day I came out on top. When I was younger, I'd have worked with a lot of site agents that were very cool, and if you can see a person under pressure, and people deal with pressure differently, and the person that doesn't panic, be very analytical, look at it and come up with an answer. I'd worked with a lot of lads of the older foremen or like that, and they'd seen it before. That's the other thing. I suppose when I was younger in the carpentry and joinery, Jimmy Dungan was looking after the apprentices. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he was a gentleman. And I suppose in recent years, I'd have spent a lot of time with talking to Dave Tracy, God rest him. He passed away there last Christmas, but he was an authority on timber, and he was based in the school in Dublin, in the joinery shop. What he didn't know about timber, like, I could ring him about anything, and he'd either go and find out, or else he'd know. He was brilliant. There's so many people within Sisk. No matter what discipline you're looking at, there's somebody that knows. It probably takes about 2 phone calls to find that person. Somebody knows. Knowledge is power. And if somebody is stuck in a problem, it's great to get that phone call, and if you can help them, it's a great thing to be able to do. If you mightn't be able to do it, but you might know somebody that can help them and point them in the right direction. And no one wants to see anyone struggling, because work is hard enough. It's anything to make it that bit easier.
Even though it was many years ago, it's clear that the time Declan spent in the joinery and the people he met there made a big impact on him. And it all helped to nurture his love of working with timber and hone the skills of his trade. Well, we met Ronan Murphy a little earlier. He is the current manager of the Joinery Training Centre. After he had taken me on a tour of the facility, we went to his office to continue the conversation, and it turns out that, like Declan, he has also been with Sisk for quite some time.
I joined Sisk 38 years ago. My father was a carpenter with Sisk and had been with Sisk for over 45 years when he retired. My grandfather was a carpenter and his grandfather was a carpenter, so it's a long line. They weren't all with Sisk, but to continue that, my own son served his time with Sisk and he's a carpenter, went through our procedure, if you like, and is now a site foreman. So continuing that circle.
Oh, very good. Is he a site foreman with Sisk?
He's a site foreman. He's on Vincent's Hospital at the moment.
Oh, very good.
So it's an industry that's obviously deep in my family and a big part of what we do. And while he was torn between music, he was going to do a music degree or he was going to become a carpenter. So he asked, what will I do? I said, I can't tell you what to do. I wouldn't tell you. But if your music is that important to you, it'll still be there in 4 years' time. You'll be a qualified carpenter. And that, I suppose, okay, he was my own son, but that would be the advice I'd give to any young boy or girl that is considering this, that it is something, it's a life skill. You can travel anywhere in the world, you can feed yourself and still be able to do those other parts of your life that you want to fill in, but you're able to, provide for yourself. You have a living.
You're from a long line of carpenters and your son is in Sisk as well, as are you. Does it have a meaning for you that Sisk is a family run company?
It's enormous. It's a huge part of it. I often joke, like I know nothing more than Sisk. I joined Sisk when I was straight from the Leaving Cert that year. I went off to Australia for a year, but was straight back to Sisk when I came back. So I've known nothing else. And when I was growing up, I knew nothing else because my father was there. So the family connection is huge. I only became aware of that when I joined Sisk, of how the family themselves were so deeply involved in the day-to-day running of the company. It would have been very easy over those generations of Sisks to pare it back and pull away and let others run the company for them, but very hands-on. And that certainly appealing to, as an employee, that resonates. But equally, I think it resonates with a lot of our clients as well, is that this business is running over 160 years now, and that the same family are involved throughout of all that. That says a lot about the business. So I suppose the sort of people that we like to get here, we're very lucky in that we're always hugely oversubscribed with the number that apply. We could have well over 100 most years. It has such a good name in the industry and in the wider world. So we're exclusively able to take lads and girls who have a Leaving Cert, mostly who have some sort of construction studies or woodwork in their background. But by far, and we're sick, I suppose, of hearing ourselves say it, by far the most important aptitude is attitude. That it doesn't matter almost what you've done in your past. If it's leaping out of you, and you'll know what I mean, when someone that just wants to be, has to be, it's a bit like, to me it's a form of art. You just have to do this thing. You want to do something with your hands, and that sort of person shines out at interview, which is why our interviews are so crucial. So as I say, we're very lucky in that regard, and it does mean that we get a hugely high quality candidate coming to us in the first place, and then our interviews get it down to the ones that we most want. But it is always a quality over quantity. There's some years we took very few because for whatever reason the candidates weren't there. We lose some from time to time. People go off, they want to do other things and they see other futures for themselves. But in the main, we retain a huge amount of our people,
Yeah. In that interview, what kind of questions do you ask them to try and extract that sort of feeling that they want to work with their hands?
Yeah, I suppose some of it comes out purely in conversation, and I suppose you'll be familiar with getting someone talking, getting them easy with themselves, and so speaking about how they got here and who dropped you up. Oh, you drove yourself, or no, you're doing your driving test. So there's usually two interviewing. Winifred, our training manager, will be there, so we'll take turns at sort of easing them into things, asking them simple questions, their email, their phone number, and simple stuff just to get them settled. And then there's a couple of tasks, again, to get them settled. One is to sketch some little object that we'll have in the room, just to buy a bit of time, let them settle their head a bit and see. It's a real test. It's a really important skill to be able to communicate with no language, if you like, a drawing of something that you're asked to make, or you have a question to ask. So it's a very important skill to have. But I suppose when it gets to the point of you've done this in school, you've done that in school, what do you do with your summers? What do you do at the weekends? And if you're getting the answers of, I made a spice rack for my granny, or I tried to make a planter box for my neighbour, something like that, they're the people straight away. There was probably no one forcing them to do that, but they just loved it. How did it work out? It was awful. That's great. What went wrong? And suddenly, if they're talking, without prompt, about what went wrong and what went right, this is the right sort of person, and that's the attitude that jumps out.
While I was in the joinery, Ronan introduced me to a couple of the successful candidates from the most recent round of applications. They are a few months into the apprenticeship now, and they told me what got them interested in carpentry in the first place and how they were getting on so far in the joinery.
So my name is Eddie Mongie. I'm 19. I'm a first year apprentice carpenter here with Sisk, and I started in May of this year. Well, I'm from Dublin, and my dad's a builder himself, so from a young age I always sort of loved being around the tools and that sort of stuff. And then when I was in transition year, I was sort of, they were really pushing apprenticeships. Just, you've seen it in the media, you've seen it in a lot of places. And I went on work experience to a joinery, and I really loved it. Just seeing the lads start off with sheet material and raw material and make stuff at the end of it, great job satisfaction, and I just said that's what I want to do. So then when I was in sort of 5th and 6th year, I went to school in town, and there was actually a Sisk site around the corner from my school, one Wilton, and for Engineers Week we got invited in on a site visit, and I got talking to the site agent there because he said he had started out as a apprentice carpenter here now, and he's running the site, and I just thought, this is deadly. I got talking to him, and I just ended up going for the job here, and luckily enough I got it.
So what's the atmosphere out like on the floor then, because you're around the people you're working with every day? Yeah,
so it's good. There's a great sort of range. There's lads really from, I thought there'd be a lot of Dublin lads, but there's actually quite a lot of lads up from the country. We're all I'm one of the youngest here when I started off, but there's lads as old as 26 in here, So there's a great range. It's a good bit of crack as well, Yeah.
And so what's an average day like?
So you'd come in at 8:30 in the morning. You'd either, depends, sometimes you'd be given a job straight away to get stuck into. Other times you might be given something at the start of a week, or you might be, I was making a kitchen unit there, so I'd started that there on Monday, and I'd been spraying it throughout the week, and it was ready to go out today. So
what's the feeling like when you finish something like that?
It's really nice being sort of given a job like that. You can do from start to finish. It starts off as a sheet of ply, and by the end of it, it's a kitchen unit finished with a countertop. There's great job satisfaction in it. That's what I really love about the job,
So speaking about the good bits of the job, what's the bit you've enjoyed the most so far?
I suppose every day is a learning day. That's what I really like about it. You hear people saying, I can't be bothered getting up for work tomorrow, It's great coming in and learning something and knowing at the end of the day you'll be better at doing something than you are at the start of the day. And never once have I said, oh God, I'm dreading going into work tomorrow. I've always really enjoyed coming in here every day, and I can't complain at all.
Is there one bit that's kind of the hardest bit, or the bit you went, this is a bit challenging now, I'll have to kind of work at this?
Well, I suppose when you start off, you're full of excitement, but the first few weeks there's a lot of sanding and a lot of edge sealing, and that's hard enough going. Your hands are worn out by the end of the day just sanding, but eventually then you start to be given more jobs, and it's great then just to be like that. Like I said, given a project at the start and being able to go start from finish and make something and see it go out then in the end.
Yeah.
You know, there's great range with carpentry. You know, you might start off doing framing in a house, and you're doing drywalls, skirting, doors, architrave. Then you're even fitting the locks. As Ronan said to us, there'll always be a carpenter on site. You'll have a carpenter from the first stage to the last stage, and that's what I really liked. You know, electricians just sort of come in and go, and same with plumbing was another one I was sort of looking at, because I know there's a bit of a shortage of wet trades, but that again, it's hidden. There's a fair bit of dirty work with that. I wouldn't fancy doing that, so I said carpentry was the right one for me.
Tell us a bit about your dad and the kind of work he does and the kind of work you did with him.
So my dad, he's a groundworks contractor down the port. So I was actually sort of the only real carpentry I was doing with him was just bits of shuttering for concrete and formwork, and then obviously a lot of concrete, and that'd be his sort of area of works down in the port.
Yeah, and is it hard work?
It is, yeah. God, I don't miss the winter down there though. It was it was bitter at times, but
it's all outdoor.
It's all outdoor, yeah. There's no hiding from the elements, but that's nearly the nice thing about being in the joinery.
It's very cosy.
It is. Although on a sunny day, you'd rather be outside now. It can get fairly warm in there.
Yeah, you'd like to split your year between working with your dad and working in the joinery.
Yeah.
And what does he think of you now working here? Is he proud to see you following his footsteps to a certain extent?
Yeah, sure. He's delighted. You know, he doesn't have necessarily to speak a trade behind him, and I think kind of he said if he could go back, he'd love to have a trade. You know, when he left school in the 80s, it was the middle of a recession. There wasn't many trades going, so he's sort of delighted for me now that I'm in with Sisk and I'm learning a trade.
My name's Owen Grocott, and I'm a 4th-year apprentice here in the Sisk Joinery in Ballymount. I'm here about 5 months or so. I started in May, 5th of May. So I was working in Smithfield with Sisk as a GO, and then I got chatting to the foreman and that, and then just got put on from there.
What's a GO?
General operative, so like just doing bits of everything really on site, bringing in trucks and all, and helping pour concrete, clean the loading bay.
And how did you end up there? Have you always been sort of thinking when you were in school and stuff that you'd like to get into construction in general, or did you sort of fall into it?
Yeah, no, I was always interested in construction. Yeah, since I was small, I was always like doing stuff with my hands, so that's where I was heading really. Yeah.
And what was it? Do you have people in your family who are involved, or did you just something came naturally to you?
Yeah, like and uncles and brothers and all are into construction, so it's kind of like that. And then always, when I was young, like, I always just like fix my bike and like all that stuff. Just always doing stuff with my hands. So
yeah, I was talking to Eddie earlier, and he was talking about that it's a really nice feeling to start off with a piece of wood and then see it become a kitchen cabinet or something like that.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating, very.
Yeah. What kind of stuff have you done that has given you that sort of feeling like, oh yeah, it looks good?
Just literally like start from bare timber, like going through the machine shop with Tony, and then coming out to us, and then we have to like sand it and prep it and then paint it and then assemble it, and then it's like a finished piece then just from like a bit of timber. Like,
does it make you confident in what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Owen and Eddie are part of the next generation of the wider Sisk family, and what they learn today during such a formative time in their lives and careers might well stay with them for many, many years to come. And I think the integrity and simplicity inherent in some of the core values at Sisk makes that far more likely to happen. It was very interesting to hear Declan O'Donovan recall something that he had been told over 2 decades ago.
When I was thinking about this over the weekend, I just thought back to one of the things that an old site agent told me when I started as a foreman. He said there's only 5 things that Sisk will ever expect of a person on a site, and they were very simple: deliver an agreed project within an agreed time frame, to an agreed standard, within an agreed budget, safely. 5 things. I was told that 25 years ago, and I often think about it. You know, like there's 5 core things that probably you'd find a link to every aspect in the business somewhere to them things.
So let's wrap up in the same place that we started, out on the floor of the John G. Sisk Training Centre. Ronan Murphy is taking me on a tour and introducing me to some of the apprentices. And before we wrapped up, he briefly described the next steps for the joinery and the vision that the company has for it.
So we're standing now in the newer building. It's about 20 odd years old. A much expanded version of what it was. It is a commercial facility, much different machinery than it would have been back then, with greater capabilities. But even at that, I suppose Sisk's realisation that, again, the people that come out of this, while back in the day they would have been tradesmen, our industry has changed so much, and while we produce 10 or 12 carpenters every year, a great portion of those go on to be site supervisors, which is a huge resource of the company. You can't buy that sort of talent and in-house, you know. Sustainability, we invented the word, I think. So we're in this new facility, but we plan to go across to an even bigger facility to expand not so much the apprentice numbers as the experience we can give them and how we can feed back into the business and be as profitable as we can for the business.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Inside Sisk. Thanks for listening, and I hope you can join us again for the next one.